We all hear these Democrats whining and crying and trying to hammer home the point of January 6th, 2021. It's getting a little old, isn't it, folks? But you know what? I thought I'd make a video, do a comparison between the January 6th, 2021 incident and the 2020 incident of BLM riots across the entire country. And then I'd also thought I'd do a comparison between the riots that happened around the White House with pro-Palestinian protesters. And then I also thought I'd do another comparison with Antifa attacking the federal courthouse in Portland for months on end. Watch my video, find out all about it, folks. Hello, America. I want to talk to you guys about something. Obviously, if you guys been on social media today, you've been seeing the leftards crying and whining incessantly about January 6th, 2021. I just want to say to you leftards, what about the BLM riots that caused over $1 billion in damage and killed 35 people? Thousands of police officers injured. 500 cities destroyed. Nothing about that? How about the pro-Palestinian protesters that tried scaling the fucking walls at the White House? Injured Secret Service agents with projectiles. 30 of them were arrested for trespassing. Numerous riots happened at the White House, pro-Palestinian-wise. What about Antifa trying to storm and trying to burn down numerous federal buildings in Portland for months? What about that? Is that not an insurrection? I call bullshit, I call hypocrisy on you leftards. Pro-Palestinian protesters created several spectacles at the White House during the last few years of Joe Biden's reign, breaking through outer perimeter fences, trespassing on the White House grounds, and assaulting Secret Service agents, White House staffs with projectiles. In one incident, during a pro-Palestinian protest outside the White House, more than 30 individuals were arrested by the U.S. Secret Service's Uniform Division for unlawful entry or accommodating after crossing safety barriers or blocking entrances during a demonstration at the White House complex. Special Agent Steve Kopak, a U.S. Secret Service spokesperson, said. The pro-Palestinian protesters had also tried to scale the external barriers at the White House as numerous other protests. The protesters also threw projectiles at Secret Service agents and other White House security officers. There were a number of these pro-Palestinian protests at the White House in 2023 and 2024, many of them turning violent. Islamist slogans can be heard amongst the crowd, and they often chanted pro-Hamas chants. Portland on fire, the summer of violence. During the summer of 2020, local police in Portland were unable to do their jobs with protesters and rioters overtaking the streets, leading the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to step in. Liberal public officials ignored the destruction and utter chaos unfolded in the city in the summer of 2020, costing taxpayers millions of dollars in damages. Civil unrest and radical liberal violence set Portland ablaze in 2020. During the summer of 2020, liberal violent agitators, many of whom were operating under the guise of Antifa, rioted throughout Portland, causing tremendous destruction and leaving crumbled communities in their wake. The Portland Police Bureau spent $6.9 million on overtime protecting civilians and local landmarks in June and July 2020 alone. Nearly 1,000 arrests were made during the summer of 2020. Over 90% of those cases were dismissed or not pursued by the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, led by rogue progressive prosecutor Mike Schmidt. Due to a lack of support from local officials, Democratic Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler and then Governor Kate Brown of Oregon, local police often had no choice but to retreat in the face of overwhelming chaos and violence caused by liberal violent agitators. Mayor Wheeler, an Oregon legislator, limited the circumstance where police officers could use tear gas to disperse angry crowds. The Portland City Council slashed the police budget and forbade police from cooperating with federal law enforcement. destruction of federal property. Ahead of the 4th of July weekend in 2020, hundreds of federal agents and law enforcement officials were called in to protect the Hartfield Federal Courthouse, located in downtown Portland, which became the focus of violence perpetrated by Antifa and other liberal violent agitators. Due to liberal state and local politicians prohibiting local law enforcement from assisting federal law enforcement in protecting the building, weeks of preventable violence and property destruction ensued. Federal law required DHS to protect the federal building, a task made nearly untenable without state and local law enforcement's assistance. Amid 8 weeks of violence, rioters started fires, bludgeoned and assaulted federal officers, used commercial-grade fireworks as weapons, and deployed saws and power tools in an attempt to break in and destroy the courthouse. More than 750 DHS officers were deployed to protect Portland's federal buildings. Every one of the approximately 62 people arrested by DHS or other federal law enforcement was connected with the attacks on federal property or federal law enforcement. Liberal violent agitators caused over 245 injuries to federal law enforcement officers, some of whom were injured multiple times and some seriously. The most serious injury to an officer to date occurred when a protester wielding a 2-pound sledgehammer struck an officer in the head and shoulder when the officer tried to prevent the protester from breaking down the door to the Hartfield Courthouse. According to the statement, other injuries included broken bones, hearing damage, eye damage, a dislocated shoulder, sprains, strains, and contusions. The damage and destruction caused by arson, looting, and vandalism was estimated to be more than $2 million, including repairs to the Mark O. Hartfield Federal Courthouse, the Edith Green Wendell Wyatt Federal Building, the Gus J. Solomon U.S. Courthouse, the Pioneer Courthouse, and the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Building. Footage showed Antifa rioters attempting to force their way into the courthouse while chanting, "Fuck the United States." Later that same evening, rioters set a fire outside the Hartfield Courthouse entrance.
This is a reporter Jorge Ventura.
BLM violence in 2020 left close to 35 people dead. The riots caused more than $1 billion in losses, the costliest in U.S. history. Several cities witnessed over 600 riots, and the violence did not start in 2020. Researcher Travis Campbell tracked more than 1,600 BLM protests nationwide between 2014 and 2019 and found that a 10% rise in civilian homicides followed as a result. This means that between 1,000 and 6,000 additional homicides occurred. In 2020 alone, there were hundreds of BLM riots across the nation. Whole sections of cities were leveled, being looted then burned down by arsonists. White people were randomly attacked in the streets. Hundreds, if not thousands, of police officers were injured. It was indeed a terrible time in America. What's worse, the violence was egged on by Democratic politicians and their servants in the corporate media. Vice President Kamala Harris even posted a fundraising effort to get rioters out of jail on her Twitter profile. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz let the rioters destroy entire sections of cities as he had the National Guard stand down. It was a very bad time in America. The rioters were weaponized by the liberal media establishment and the Democratic power structure in their struggle against Donald Trump. BLM riots often were random and served no purpose. A criminal would threaten to kill police, the police would shoot him, and riots would result. There was no rhyme or reason for the behavior of the participants. It was truly a dark time in America.